Hi, I'm Chin Lu.
And I'm Sal, and this is our next make. This week, to celebrate Earth Day, we're making a better home for our vegetable and flower seeds.
Up until now, we've been using a shoebox to store our seeds. We've also started collecting our own seeds in little bags and these repurposed sauce containers. Our new seed box design will have room to store all of these, plus some labeling tools for when we start our seedlings indoors. I took a few measurements of our seed packs and then jumped into Xdesign to start laying things out. I started a front view sketch with simple shapes that laid out the seed pack and sauce cup sizes so that we make sure there's enough height in each layer for the content. Then I created another sketch, top-down view this time, that let me lay out the plastic seed cups. Now I could model everything in 3D and see how the whole design looked.
Building this out of reclaimed materials was really important to us, so we reached into a stack of hardwood flooring that we salvaged from an old home renovation and started to breathe new life into it. We first removed the nails that held the boards to the subfloor. Then we removed this nasty double-sided foam tape that held a second layer of flooring on top of the hardwood. Before running any of this material through our power tools, we took the time to remove anything that could damage them. Reclaimed material often has dirt, rocks, and bits of metal that will immediately destroy planer and jointer knives, and wreak havoc on saw blades too. So be careful when using old material. We also quickly sanded the tops of the boards to remove any remaining adhesive and what little polyurethane was left on these ancient floorboards. Then we started on the quest to find the rectangle that remained within the wood. We ripped the tongue and grooves off at the table saw, and then sent the boards through the planer to get them down to about 1/2 inch. It was really rewarding to see the old floorboards go from being a stack of salvaged material to freshly milled lumber. Since we needed to glue up a few panels, we took some time to group the boards into the best sets and label them so we can keep track of things. We cut the boards to their rough length and started the panel layout. We alternated the grain to ensure the panel would stay flat, and played around with the layout to have as seamless a grain match as we could. We used Titebond Original to glue things together and clamp things up for a few hours. Before the glue had time to fully cure, we used a sharp chisel to scrape off any squeeze out. Then we sanded the panels to remove any remaining glue and to flatten them a bit more. Now we could start cutting the mitered corners of the boxes. We cut a miter on one side of all the pieces first, and then we set up a stop block to cut all of the same length pieces at the same time. Cutting identical pieces all at once, without changing your setup, is a great way to ensure all of your parts will be the same. With the miters cut, we could cut the oversized panels to their final heights, and then cut the grooves that will hold the floor pieces. We're using 1/8 inch hardboard, so one pass through the table saw was all it took to achieve a perfect fit. The lower box needs a few stopped dados to receive the divider walls that create 4 seed packet compartments. To set up for cutting these, I aligned and taped together opposite sides of the box and then clamped a few rails to the boards to guide my palm router. It worked well, but I should have either taken more care near the grooves or cut the grooves after cutting the dados, because I did get a bit of blowout. I also messed up a bit with my layout and didn't get the dados perfectly centered. Thankfully, I could recover from this later. I dry fit the box so I could mark the exact length of the dividers and lay out for the cross lap between the two. I cut this joint on the table saw after running a test cut to dial in the perfect blade height. I included the tall handle piece in the setup as well, and made sure to offset it to compensate for the mistake I made when cutting the dados. That way the handle would still be centered in the box. The handle is attached to the long divider using a 1/2 lap, or technically a middle lap. After resetting the blade height, I made many passes to remove all of the material and achieve a nice fit. The last pieces we needed to cut were the bottoms, and we did that at the table saw. One of the box bottoms needs an opening in it to allow the handle to pass through it, so I drilled a few pilot holes and then cut the opening with a jigsaw. To strengthen this area and make it durable for long-term use, I made these rectangular collars. I glued them in place and used painter's tape as clamps. At this point, Chinlu was excited to get working on the handle, so I quickly glued it up.
While the glue was drying, I was thinking about how to bring some fun element into the make. I thought perhaps we could decorate the handle a bit. Maybe make it into a tree or a plant, but almost instantly my brain drifted to Groot. It would be so fun to have a baby Groot growing out of the seed box. After some searches online, I settled on the image I liked and imported it into Xdesign to test out the look. Liking the effect, I printed out the design to do the same to the actual handle. Once the glue was set, I traced the outline of Groot on the board. At the bandsaw, I carefully cut out the profile. Sal had the great idea of cutting out Groot's eyes so that we can use it as finger holds. So I used a properly sized bit at the drill press. Then to add some texture to the design, I hand sketched Groot's details referencing the original art. With some rasps, files, and carving knife, I worked the grooves into the oak.
To glue up the boxes, we align the sides to a straight edge and tape them together. This helps everything stay flat during the glue up, and the tape acts as clamps on the corners. We added glue to the miters and the dados, and then carefully folded everything together. We were glad to have 2 sets of hands while we inserted the bottom and glued on the last side of the box. We wiped off as much of the squeeze out as we could and checked for square before taping the last 2 corners. Although unnecessary, we also added a few clamps to hold everything in place while the glue set up. Instead of measuring to cut the top to the exact size, we used one of the boxes to position the rip fence and then cut our panel to width and length. We finished up the top by cutting an opening for the handle, just like we did in the box bottom.
At this point, I was still looking for some punch in the Groot design. I thought about using a wood burning tool to singe the edges and add darker texture on Groot. But having no success rummaging through our storage for our old wood burning tool, I decided that it was time to either get a new tool or try a new technique. In my research, I found this Scorch marker kit. It's a neat idea invented by a firefighter and his wife. It is a special non-toxic formula that you can apply to wood, and under a heat gun, the ink would brown up and leave what looks like a burned pattern on the wood. It is important to not use this on plywood or any wood product that has chemical treatment on it, as it will emit toxic fumes under the heat source. You want to do this in a well-ventilated area regardless. It was fairly straightforward, and I'm happy with the overall result. I'm not completely sold on this technique moving forward though. I still feel that the scorch effect with the marker or ink looks like it is drawn or painted on. And perhaps I was not well experienced enough to apply the heat in a timely manner, but parts of the design still had the pink residue that never fully darkened. Also, the use of the heat gun on the oak seemed to darken its grain, as well as dry up its glue seam. So I do wonder if I could have gotten a better result even with just a brown Sharpie. Well, that thought led me to using Sharpies to apply the green tint to Groot's tips. All in all, a good learning experience. I finished off the project with a coat of butcher block oil, and now it's ready to be filled with our seed collection. I am so happy with this seed box. It stores all of our seeds and it helps us organize our planting season, and it looks amazing.
I agree. I love how we were able to repurpose old flooring and turn it into this wonderful box. And I love how the nail holes still tell the story of what the material used to be. If this actually inspired you to create something of your own out of repurposed materials, please let us know in the comments. And until then, we are Groot.